All right. Hello and welcome. Hello and welcome. Welcome to another episode today of the Empowered Immigrant Live. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Otis Landerholm. I'm the founding attorney here at Landerholm Immigration, A.P.C, where we fight for your American dream. And today we'll be talking about the topic of what options does someone have after a deportation. All right, and so we've been getting this question. People are, people want to know the answer to it in our consultations, etc. And so I want to do an episode about this. And thank you everyone for being here and welcome. And remember that the Empowered Immigrant Live is here to train, teach, inspire, and empower immigrants to make the most out of immigration laws and to make the most out of their lives. All right. Today our theme is, what options does a person have after a deportation? Like, is it possible to bring a person back to the U.S. lawfully after they've already been deported? And so we'll talk about that. And yes, in some instances it is possible, and in some instances it can be done. And I want to talk it through so that if you know anybody in that situation, they could know how to maximize their chances of being able to return in the future. Okay? And my question for everybody, as always, is, do you want to get a green card? Do you want to apply for asylum or a U visa or VAWA or some kind of immigration benefit or some kind of immigration status? Because if so, go for it. All right? And I'd love to help you with that. My firm is on a mission to win 10,000 immigration cases in the next 10 years. All right? That's 10,000 wins by 2035 is what we're going for. And we would love for your case to be one of them. And so thanks everyone for being here. And as I'm talking today, if you have questions, please feel free to submit your questions. Okay? So it's May. I'm recording this in May of 2025. Trump has been back in power for over 100 days now. And a lot has changed. And I've been sharing a lot of those different changes each week on our podcast and on our live session here with you. But there are a lot of changes happening. All right, the Laken Riley Act has been signed into law. They're getting going with mass deportation efforts. They have started a new registration requirement. They've fired a lot of people in the government, not just in the immigration departments, but throughout the federal government, but including in the immigration world. Immigration judges, right, have lost their jobs. They've been discussing a new travel ban. They've had people deported under the Alien Enemies Act without any due process. They've terminated TPS, or tried to, for various countries. They are, under the Alien Enemies Act, they are trying to deport people to third countries, and we're seeing more of that. I don't know if you saw in the news just today, but a federal judge blocked a plane of deportees, mainly from Asia, from the Philippines, from Laos, Cambodia, and Vietnam. All right? A federal judge blocked a plane of immigrants going not to Asia, even though that's where they were from, going to Libya. It was destined for Libya is where they were going to send this plane. Anyway, check it out in the news if you want some interesting reading. It's like, oh my gosh, there are certain countries that don't accept, or that haven't historically has accepted deportees, and the Trump administration is putting pressure on those countries to accept deportees. But at the same time trying to deport people to other countries. And anyway, so that's a disturbing and, question, like, how could that be illegal, right? Send somebody back to a country that they have no legal status, in that other country whatsoever. Nevertheless, it is happening. All right, so that's kind of where we are. All right, that's where we are. I want to share also a little bit about the registration requirement. All right, the registration requirement is in effect. It has been in effect since April 11th. And yes, the program is being challenged in the courts, but it is going forward for the time being. And what you got to know is that many people are already registered, and if you are already registered, whether because you had a visa or you were in immigration court proceedings before, or you ever had your biometrics taken for an immigration benefit before, then you're not affected by this. You're already quote unquote registered. But many people have not, and people, whether you have or haven't, people need good advice about it, all right? And so if you're in that situation and if you want good advice about it, please feel free to reach out, and we'd love to help you navigate it. And we are not, as an organization, helping people, unless you're our client already, we are not helping people actually do the registration, but we are helping people get advice about it, all right? So I just wanted to share that, and thank you all very much for being here and for tuning in to our episode today. All right, so now I'm going to get to the question, all right? Some clients have been asking, hey, what are the options after a deportation were to occur to bring someone back lawfully? And what I want to say first is, you normally have more options if you fight your case here in the U.S. All right? Like if you're here right now, all the stuff about Trump, you may have seen, they'll give a stipend or payment if you self-deport. Like, please get good advice before, if you're even thinking about that. Like, typically your chances of winning are so much higher if and when you fight your case here in the US. All right? So to the extent that the current administration is trying to tell people to, hey, just go ahead and deport yourself, please don't. You will have more options here. I recommend having a detailed consultation with an attorney who actually knows the law to help you figure out what options are best. Okay? So that's important. Then if you do have a family member, a friend, someone you care about who was deported, and if you want to bring them back, what do we do? Okay? We start there with a consultation as well. And we also start by requesting all the records, because we do that through the FOIA process, and we want to really determine why the deportation happened, when it happened, how it happened, where it happened. Each of these issues can lead to different pathways or different possible options for the future. Okay? Sometimes upon exiting, even through a deportation, sometimes people trigger a 10-year inadmissibility. So sometimes there's a 10-year bar. Sometimes that 10-year inadmissibility can be waived. All right? And so what options really exist after a deportation? Well, there are a few, okay? None of them are easy, but there are a few. The most common option is through what's called an I-212 waiver, all right? An I-212 waiver is the waiver that can waive a deportation. But you need a petitioner. You need a United States citizen spouse, parent, or child if the child's over 21. You have to go through a long process to do it, all right? But if you're in that situation, and if it is only the deportation that's causing the inadmissibility and not certain crimes or not certain fraud or other things, if you're not otherwise barred, from being petitioned by your petitioner, then you can do that, okay? And it's a process. You start with the petition, then you do a consular interview where you're denied, then you do your waiver. And you go in that order, and then you can get a visa in your passport to re-enter the U.S. lawfully. When you are going through that process, it's very important that you do not re-enter the country unlawfully, all right? If you re-enter unlawfully or attempt to re-enter unlawfully, you trigger what's called the permanent bar. And we call it the permanent bar, but actually you can waive a permanent bar when you're out for 10 more years. And so if you're outside the U.S. and you attempt to re-enter unlawfully and you're sent back, then now it's like, okay, we got to wait 10 more years before we apply for anything. And so don't do that, right? Instead, talk it through with a lawyer and let's really figure out how we can maximize your chances of winning that case. Some other options that, it's very rare, but some folks can do what's called a motion to reopen to then re-enter the U.S. Now, normally there's what we call the departure bar with motions to reopen, saying that if you have actually been removed, you're no longer eligible to reopen your immigration case. So normally motions to reopen are not possible after a deportation, but there are some arguments around the departure bar, okay? Some other options that exist past deportation include U visas and T visas, potentially VAWA cases. There are some options available, okay? Those can be very long, they can be very slow, but they can change the game, all right? And so that's what I wanted to share today. Thank you for being here and thank you for paying attention. If you're just tuning in right now, my name's Otis Landerholm. I'm the founding attorney here at Landerholm Immigration, A.P.C, where we fight for your American dream. And yeah, thank you. Thank you for being here. And so I do have some time to answer questions that are out there. And so please feel free to submit your questions in the chat, and I'll do my best to answer as many as I can here today. And yeah, we can go through them. All right. Solo, you say love your 2035 vision. Hey, thank you for that. KKKKK, you say I have an I-918 certified. Can I put it on hold until I found out the outcome of my I-601A? Okay, I got what you're saying. So your I-918 for your U visa, all right? Your I-918 for your U visa is certified by law enforcement. And when you have the certification, you have 6 months to file the actual U visa. And so I don't recommend putting that on hold until you find out the outcome of your I-601A. I don't recommend doing that. Instead, I recommend making a decision, right? Are you going to file your U visa or are you not, right? And if you want to go 100% forward on your I-601A, if you have a strong I-601A case, strong showing of extreme hardship to your U.S. citizen spouse, for example, then you can go forward with your I-601A and basically let your U visa case die, all right? Alternatively, you can do both, right? It is completely legal, completely valid. I've done it a bunch of times where we have a U visa and a I-601A pending simultaneously together for the same person, and whichever one gets adjudicated quicker, which is almost always the I-601A, we would go with it. But if the I-601A gets denied, now you've already got your spot in line for your U visa, right? So things to consider. Talk that through with your lawyer. But if you were without knowing the details about your case and without knowing how far into the I-601A you are, It's also a financial concern. Like, it might cost more to do two services rather than one, right? And so that might be a concern also. But absent kind of any concern, if you're just looking for the best advice would be to do both, right? And so that way you maximize your chances of winning one or the other, right? And you give yourself a pathway to a plan B if one of them is denied. All right, Sandra D., you say, can I enter the USCIS office for my naturalization interview with a Mexican passport? Yeah, 100%. 100%. Enter with your naturalization interview notice and your ID. Typically it would be your work permit or your green card or your, your driver's license, right? When you're entering the building, all you're showing is your identity so that you can get through security there, and then you'll go up and you'll meet with the officer. The officer will ask you if you have your green card. If you don't have your green card, you're just showing your passport, they might ask, well, did you send a note, the I-90 request to replace your green card? Was it lost or stolen or something like that? Anyway, it's a good idea to look for your actual green card to take it with you if you're applying for citizenship. All right, user 885. I have an 18-year-old kid. He's in the Army, and I got an I-601 approved. What is the best? You mean an I-601A approved, maybe, to leave the country? But you have an 18-year-old in the Army? I mean, good question. There's lots of different factors at play there. But if your 18-year-old son is in the Army and once he turns 21, he could petition for you and potentially get you parole in place. Also, you could do the whole case without leaving the U.S. When that's an option, that's often very wise to do it that way. All right? That's often very wise to do it that way, and yeah, and so anyway, my best advice, user 885, my best advice would be to talk it through with a lawyer, and really think about what the best thing would be for your case and for your situation. If you're about to go to your interview at the consulate in your home country, and if you have a very strong, very clean case, then okay, sure, I can see a lawyer recommending you to just get it done with and get your green card already. But if not, maybe hold off and try to do it through your child. That's awesome. You have both of those as options. Okay. Barbara Martinez, I see your quote here. I guess you will help these crazy Palestine protesters. Yeah, thank you for being here and thank you for saying that. I agree with the Palestine protesters. All right, I think that what's happening in Israel and Palestine is really, really not good for the state of the world and for the state of the universe, and it would be an honor, actually, for me to help one of the Palestinian protesters that's actually getting their green cards taken away. Like, these people should have the First Amendment right to free speech, right? To share their viewpoint, share their political views and their political opinions, and public protest is important. Right? It's like, how can we as a society learn from the errors of our ways if we punish people who are shouting out that our ways have errors, right? And so, yeah, I don't think that the Palestine protesters are quote unquote crazy. I appreciate them, and for me, it would be an absolute honor to defend any of them, right? So that's my response to you. Thank you for being here, and thank you for sharing. KKKKK, I see your thing here as well. You said, I heard that the ones that we submitted fingerprints for failed. For example, pre-Biden parole in place. No need to register. Okay, that's interesting. So you heard that the ones that you submitted fingerprints for failed. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know exactly what you're saying there, but I would say maybe, feel free to give us a call and we could look at what may have happened there and give you some advice about how to fix it. Or, I see your other question about the U visa versus I-601A, like you've got to do fingerprints on either of those services, right? So, hopefully you're, oh, I see what maybe you're saying, that you submitted fingerprints for the Biden parole in place process, so you don't need to register. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, everybody that did the Biden parole in place process, like through your spouse, yeah, you don't need to register again because you're already registered, right? Good question, good point. All right, Navi Singh, you say, how much time for India, Mumbai, taking for IR1 visa processing? I don't know off the top of my head. I don't know. That's a great question. A year? I don't know. I'm guessing. I haven't done a IR1 case in Mumbai in a while, so I don't know how much they're taking right now. If you get that answer and you want to put it in the comments to this video, or if somebody else out there knows the answer to that, I'd love to learn it. All right, that's great. Prince Adedayo, thank you for your question. You say, how long to wait to hear from an immigration after a green card interview? It's impossible to know the answer to that, but I have cases that we wait 1 week and we get the green card. All right. I've also had cases where we had one interview and then it goes silent for over a year, and then we get another interview, and then we get a decision. All right? Sometimes when there's long delays, maybe the officer got fired, or maybe they quit, or maybe they or maybe there's a complication in their case that they need to speak to with their supervisor, and they need to do some research about it first. Or lots of different things can cause delays after a green card interview. And so it's a very case-by-case question. All right. Charles, I see your question here. You say, what if I don't have a joint account with my spouse? What if I don't have a joint account with my spouse? So the thing about marriage-based cases, and thank you for asking this, Charles, the thing about marriage-based cases is you want to show that your marriage is quote-unquote bona fide. It's not just for immigration purposes, right? You actually care about each other. You actually love each other. You're actually wanting to form a life together. And so you don't have to have a joint bank account to show that you actually care about your spouse and that you're actually married and that you don't have to have a joint account. The question is, what other evidence do you have? And then the other question is, well, why don't you have a joint account, right? Why don't you? Some people don't believe in joint accounts or prefer to have separate financing. But you have the right to have a joint account. You could go to the bank and you could open one, right? If you want one, right? If it would be useful. Sometimes it's a useful thing if you really are married and if you really are like sharing your life and your finances and all that stuff with another human being. Like it's very, I'll say it's an extra level of convenience in many ways to have all that stuff be joint together, right? It gives your spouse the power to withdraw and deposit things for you, and vice versa. So it can be useful for your life, but you have the right to decide whether or not that actually is the case for you and your spouse. Everybody's different. And if you decide that you don't want to do that, then don't do it and just prove your good faith marriage some other way. But if you decide you'd like to do it, and if you're having a problem with your bank about that because of your immigration status, for example, go to a different bank. All right? Like you can open a joint account even if you don't have your papers in order yet. Okay. All right, Franca, I see your question. I filed an I-130 and an I-485 for my parents in March of 2023. My mom received her green card June 2023, but Dad's I-130 is pending. You know, this happens sometimes. And yeah, you know, sometimes it's faster, like were your mother and father married when you were born? Sometimes that speeds it up a little bit. Sometimes that causes an issue for the fathers if a child was born before the marriage happened. Anyway, so there might be a complication in your father's situation. I don't know. There might have been not as much evidence submitted along with your father's case, you know, potentially. Or it might just be a government, you know, 2 petitions received and, you know, being adjudicated by 2 different officers, and one is fast and one is slow, and one is new and one is experienced. And so, you know, one might just be on a slower track, you know. But June 2023, and it's still not adjudicated, like that is a while. So you could talk to your lawyer or feel free to give us a call and we could consider really pushing that case if you would like. All right. So JAL, you say, can I change an interview in Juarez, and like an interview date, you mean? And if yes, how many times? And does my spouse need to go with me? Like, you don't want to abandon your case, but yes, you can change the interview. I don't recommend I don't recommend changing the interview more than once, right? You know, but in theory, yes, you can do that. So yeah. And does your spouse need to go with you? So is your spouse your petitioner? I mean, the answer is no. Your spouse won't be allowed to be in your interview with you, so they don't need to go. And if we're talking about like in the interview in Ciudad Juarez, your spouse cannot go into the interview with you. They won't be allowed in, but they can certainly travel down there with you if you want them to, but they don't have to. All right. Mr. Pantalones, all right, cool name. Can you wait for a U visa to process outside of the country? Yes, 100% you can. It's just a very slow process, right? So U visas take forever. And so, but yes, you can absolutely be outside the country waiting for that visa to be adjudicated. Luna Baby, sometí una moción de reapertura hace 2 semanas. All right, cool. All right, so I submitted a motion to reopen 2 weeks ago. All right, well, good luck on that. All right, buena suerte. All right, so yeah, that's great. JAL, oh yeah, you already answered that. Nice. Rosita, a new pope has been elected. He's American from Chicago. Okay, cool. I was wondering what was going to happen there. I saw that there was a news about like smoke signals or something going up in the Vatican. So that's interesting. All right, peace on earth. What can you do if you have a deportable crime and you want to adjust, and once you become a green card holder, does deportability go away? So you want to be very cautious about whether or not your crime is waivable, okay? So, and whether or not it will be waived when you apply for adjustment of status. Because if it is not waivable, and if it causes inadmissibility, and if you apply, you could put yourself at risk, okay? And yeah, there are some crimes that cause deportability but not inadmissibility, and so if that's the case, then that's okay. There are a few of those crimes out there. But what I would recommend is talk things through well with an immigration attorney, all right? And make sure that you've got waivers in place, make sure you understand the risks involved, And yeah, once that crime is waived, then it will not be the basis for putting you into deportation proceedings in the future, but it will always cause a challenge for you if you travel, all right? You'll be put into secondary. They'll do a full review of everything, make sure you were honest and open about it. They'll review all the records, make sure you actually are admissible, and that'll happen on every single entry. So you got to be aware of that. All right, 2 more questions, and then I'm going to wrap up. Jordan, you say, what should I expect to be asked in my I-130 interview coming up in 11 days for my husband from South America? Yeah, great question. So I-130 interview, they're going to ask they're going to review the information in the form and make sure that all of the information that was put in the I-130 form is accurate. And then they're going to ask about your relationship, right? The 2 requirements for an I-130 are, 1, that the petitioner has lawful status, is either a U.S. citizen or a green card holder, and 2nd, that the relationship between the petitioner and the spouse, for example, in your situation, spouse, is in good faith, right? It's legal and in good faith, and it's a legitimate marriage, not just for immigration purposes. So those are the things that they'll be asked. You know, you might be asked details about how you met and when did you fall in love and who proposed, and you know, they might ask each of those questions. All right. Mellow Sammy Joe, you say paperwork needs to be done before entering America. I can't just walk into another country. Yeah, that's true. That's true for the most part. All right. There are some laws that are on the books that allow a person to walk into another country, or at least used to, right? For example, asylum laws allowed that to happen, and people could flee for their life from their home country into another one, and you know, that happened a lot in World War II, and asylum laws were passed in the 1951 Geneva Convention on the Status of Refugees, because of what happened during World War II. And so, you know, sometimes, you know, you can. But yes, by and large, you have to get a visa in your passport in order to lawfully enter another country. Very good. All right, Ray Kerr. I was deported 1 month ago. I'm waiting for my I-130 support to be approved in less than 3 months. Got it. Thank you for being here, and thank you for saying that, and I'm sorry that you were in that situation. So do you have an I-130 through a marriage to a U.S. citizen? Is that what you're saying? Because if so, and if you were deported 1 month ago, if so, the process is first your I-130, then your consular interview, and then you'll need to prepare an I-212 waiver to waive the deportation. And the best advice for you is to not re-enter, don't do anything, you know, don't try to come back to the U.S. without going through all of those steps of the process. And we've got to get all those steps of the process approved first before you can, you know, get that stamp in your passport, come into the United States, and get a green card. Okay? That's the way it works. And if you want help with that type of process, I love winning that type of case, all right? And so my office is very good at that type of process, and we'd love to help you, all right? Nice. All right, everyone. Thank you all so much for being here. That's all I've got for today. I really appreciate each of you. My name is Otis Landerholm. I'm the founding attorney here at Landerholm Immigration, A.P.C, where we fight for your American dream. And if this was useful, if this was helpful, please take a moment, go to YouTube, subscribe to our channel, and hit the notification bell when you subscribe to our channel, and then you can be notified whenever we upload an additional video with news, with updates, and things like that. Immigration is crazy. It's a crazy issue right now, and so there's a lot changing. So I recommend staying in touch through our social media feeds etc., and also by subscribing to our channel in YouTube. All right. So thank you all very much for being here. I see there's a couple of other questions that have come in. I'm sorry I don't have time to answer those ones right now, but please come back, all right, and ask those questions next time, and I'll do my best to get to them right away, okay? So thank you all so much for being here. Really appreciate it. Otis Landerholm, Landerholm Immigration A.P.C., where we fight for your American dream, and we'll see you next time on our next episode of the Empowered Immigrant Live. Thanks a lot, everybody. Make it a great day. Take care. Bye-bye.